This cookie right here is a feminized sub. How would you talk?
Let's see.
There's something that happens in my subs' eyes when I dress them up.
When I put on a strap, there is a bit more of this big D energy.
By loving non-binary people, they were the ones that deconstructed, you're not a girl, so I'm not a lesbian. There are gender roles that are enforced that do not feel comfortable.
Welcome to Dommed Podcast. We are your hosts, Mistress Gemma
And Goddess Seraphyna.
Are you ready to be dommed? Gender roles and kink.
Yes.
Where do we even start, right?
I think a zoom out is always best. For context, I am queer, so that is my perspective that's going to be projected onto the subject. And with society, there are gender roles that are enforced that for many of us, myself included, do not feel comfortable.
And you think these gender roles are associated just based on our sex, yes?
Yes, so it's essentially saying, boys play with balls and trucks.
The color blue.
Yes, and they are the ones that have to open up the door, and they are the ones that have to pay. Granted,
they're more masculine in nature.
Yes, they have to present a specific way. They're not allowed to wear dresses. They're not...
And vice versa.
Yes, and then women
should be pretty, not heard.
And submissive.
They have to be very inviting and open and nurturing.
Yes.
If a woman is assertive, then she might be considered bossy and bitchy.
Yes.
If a man is very considerate and more passive, then he is, what do they call them?
Betas now.
Betas. Yeah.
Which is so silly, stupid in my eyes.
But sometimes it's nice to have a good beta.
Well, of course.
But would you consider like being beta a gender though?
Not at all.
Okay.
But that's the descriptor of certain qualities, certain roles that you take on as, men are the dominant, women are submissive. Those are gender roles. The way you dress, which is so silly to have an item of clothing be gendered. And these are all things that kink and DS dynamics create a very beautiful space to explore and to deconstruct.
And play around with it.
Yes.
The fluidity.
Yes.
Have you been able to play with gender roles?
Being a kinkster and being queer are actually a very similar experience. There's this little joke that when you're on a first date with a queer person, you always discuss and giggle over the parts in childhood or the early signs that we're screaming, I am queer, without discovering that yet. And the same thing happens with kinksters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is what I'm discovering.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because I've been doing feminization for years and years and years. If people don't know what feminization is, it's where you dress cis men up in women's clothing, do their makeup.
You feminize them, yeah.
Yeah, you feminize them.
And I want to bring up a point where I don't enjoy calling it sissification.
Yes.
Because I think that is demeaning to the feminine.
Yes.
And sissification has a negative connotation, right? That you're sissy, you're weak, you're not capable. I thought pretty hetero most of my life, but there are definitely aspects of understanding what queerness is. And so I do identify queer just because I've grown involved to be more pansexual. It's about the person and their soul that I'm drawn to than their gender or sex. But going back to sissification as a female and identifying as she, her, if I am going to dress my submissive as a woman when they don't necessarily identify that way, to me, I want to glorify my gender. I want to glorify, and I'm in a way creating them in my image to be honoring and representation of me, an extension of me. And so I call it feminization. And I know for some submissives, it can be humiliating, but I am curious as to why that feels humiliating. And the only thing I could think of, it's because of the constructs that society has created
Completely.
that makes it feel humiliating, right?
Yes.
Because without the shame, we don't feel that.
Yes. As you said, making them in my image is that I think that kink can create a space of exploration without labeling. And I think that that can be incredibly beneficial because not all men that like to dress up and be pretty are trans at all.
No.
And it just feels
Or
really...
they don't even have a desire to be
Yes.
a different sex.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's something that happens in my subs' eyes when I dress them up in the things that they've always really wanted to. Their eyes twinkle. You can feel the shift of their energy when they allow their feminine to step forward. And although it can be in their day-to-day shameful, it's a snippet of liberation and authenticity that not many people get to see or to witness. Sometimes they don't want that responsibility of, oh, I made these choices to dress up or to put that dress on or to put those stockings on and to see how that sensory experience feels. That to be forced, it strips their responsibility away from it and it strips their shame and guilt from it.
Or it's confronting it.
Yes.
The way that is freeing. There is a shift in kind of a softness that they embody.
I love that softness. It's so freaking cute and it's just really endearing. And also you can see them deconstruct what they have learned to be shameful about. I think some people, yes, go into humiliation, but I've never feminized anyone who wants to be humiliated in that state because, to be completely honest, I think it's more humiliating to be in the masculine. But I think that's a hot take.
So when you've played with femme identifying submissives, well, have you?
Yes.
Okay. Or maybe in your personal when you switched.
Yes.
Is there the opposite of
Yes.
you embodying a masculine role?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
what does that look like?
I am daddy.
Okay, I'm a femme daddy. Like,
yeah.
my femininity doesn't get stripped away. I may step into more masculine, but I don't feel like I am
A dude?
embodying a dude. And even when I put on a strap,
Yeah.
like, sure, there is a bit more of this like big D energy that comes out, but I'm still feeling pretty feminine all the time.
Yes. So for myself, I don't think I do, but I do have femme identifying people that like to be called little boy in those states.
Yeah.
And it's really cute. They come out more, how do I say this? It's like a cute little jester.
Like
a little, yes. Yeah, there's this like mischievous little clown boy that comes out.
I guess there's no rhyme or reason to why. It just is for an individual. Now, I am more curious, speaking to my feminized subs, you know, what that shift is in their mind. And I'd like to hear the opposite for female identifying individuals who then shift the gender roles when they submit into a more masculine or boy.
Yes. I used to identify as a lesbian, and it wasn't until I started falling in love with non-binary people, and they are clearly not a boy. They're clearly not a girl. And it's this beautiful interpretive dance of allowing different energies to come forward for themselves that I know with just one look when I use he, him pronouns. It's their energy. It shifts into a specific state. It could be mischievous. It could be more laid back. It could be more, usually their energy goes further in that state. Their posture changes. things like that, a lot of nonverbals, and then you can clearly tell when they are more feminine. And I use different adjectives when describing their attractiveness. So if their masculine is out, I'll go, oh, you look so handsome today. I love when you look handsome for me and all this. Or like, you look like such a pretty little princess today. And they really lean in. So it's a reading of energy, and it's very clear to tell, at least for myself, it's a shift. And I think that by loving non-binary people, they were the ones that deconstructed, oh, you're not a girl, so I'm not a lesbian. And that's what opened me up into playing and falling in love with anyone.
Yeah. Was there a bit of a learning curve for you into your queerness, whether that was within kink or outside of that, in terms of relating to others and the constructs that you had before growing up?
Yeah, I think for anyone raised in this society and doesn't want to always subscribe to that, there is constant deconstruction.
Yeah.
And I think that my queerness allowed me to not only deconstruct gender roles, because when in romantic or sexual settings with a woman or the same gender, there's not a boy here. So I can't play boy and you can't play boy. So what feels right? And it's more of a delegation of I'm best at this, you're best at that. So let's do that together. And then also very switch-like behavior. But it happens with everyone. There's constant deconstruction.
Yeah.
And intentional deconstruction at that.
Yeah.
Which allows the self-awareness of what actually feels good. And that's where I really like feminization, because I like creating and holding a space where people can explore without labels being projected onto them, that it just is.
Yeah.
One, and two, dominating them into that space, telling them that they're going to do this. Obviously, negotiation happens beforehand, but I enjoy being the parent, essentially. It doesn't have to be mommy, it doesn't have to be daddy, but I enjoy being the parent of saying, you are going to dress like this, whether it feels comfortable or not. And then the more that energy and that feminine starts to come out, they realize that it's not humiliating. They realize it's very enjoyable. Yeah, liberation comes from it.
Yeah.
Versus humiliation.
Yeah, I think the moment I had to identify as queer is when I fell in love with a trans woman.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so special.
Yeah, and they were still relatively masculine presenting because they were early on in their journey. But the way that I related to them, the way that we communicated, and just the basis of the energy of our relationship was very different from a hetero.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
Completely different.
Yeah.
It definitely was speaking in more elusive but nonverbal ways, as you were saying, than a very direct and like clear cut, like this is what's happening and being said, and this is a direction. There was just more of a meandering and flow and fluidity and swimming in that. And when it comes to kink and my experience in the feminization, is there an opposite? Is it called masculinization?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do it.
I'm interested in hearing from the queer community or the lesbian community that's into kink. Like, is there an equal opposite to feminization? Is it because being feminine and female is more taboo, so then that is what is accentuated? Versus masculinity is like praised, so then it doesn't have that taboo feel? Can someone answer this?
Yes, please do. One. And two, I believe that it was Mr. Cyrus. She actually talked about doing CBT, which I don't know if we're allowed to say this, but cock and ball torture. But it was a femme presenting lesbian that wanted CBT done into
Ah.
wear a strap with all parts. And she said that it was an incredibly eye-opening and really beautiful experience. It's something that I would be really interested in.
I'm really curious,
Yeah.
for sure. I'm just wondering how popular it is. When it comes to feminization, I have noticed that I get quite a few young military boys, and also just the younger generation. I think there's more of an acceptance to exploring it in themselves, at least.
Yeah.
If they may, and probably don't ever do it publicly. But there's a greater number of them that want to explore feminization. I think it's just an interesting correlation that I've seen.
Yeah. What's your theory on it?
It's that they have to be so hyper masculine in the military
Yeah.
that it's the balance, the homeostasis that they're able to release and surrender into something that's opposite.
Yes. That makes a lot of sense. Are these subs that come to you, do you think that it's more on a humiliation basis or just a self-discovery?
I'm not quite sure because I don't think I allow the space for
Humiliation?
I mean, they could feel humiliated. They're allowed to feel whatever they want to feel.
Yeah, totally.
But that's not the way that I present it. As I said before, it's more of an honoring of the feminine and my being. And so can I be humiliating to them in certain ways? Yes, but I am not ever directly humiliating them because they're feminine. I might be humiliating because of the other activities associated.
Heard. I don't know if you're comfortable with this, but can you do like a teeny tiny mini role play? This cookie right here is a feminized sub. How would you talk?
Let's see. Look at my pretty little girl. So perfectly round and soft. And I'm going to teach you how to be a proper girl. I think it's easier seeing you. And you're going to make me proud, won't you?
Of course.
Yes, mistress.
Yes, mistress. Thank you.
I mean, I was just getting started, but okay. Well, and I'm going to train you to be my good little girl. And I'm going to make you my little toy.
Did you enjoy being dommed? Like, subscribe, and add your worships in the comments. Follow us on all socials linked in the bio below.